Tashidele, today I would like to thank again for asking me to come here and to talk about some teachings of Buddha. Basically, the Buddha has come to this world 2,500 years ago, and he taught 84,000 teachings, and he taught 84,000 aspects of Dharma. So reason why he taught this is because out of his limitless compassion and wisdom, and he wanted to every single sentient beings to practice the teaching that he taught and to achieve enlightenment just as he did. So before the actual conversation starts, I wanted to say one thing, that Buddha Shakyamuni was not a superior being at the beginning. He was just one of us. He was Prince Siddhartha, and then he realized that this material pleasure that he has is not enough to make the human or the essence of sentient being is worthwhile. So then he realized that there's something that can go beyond that, and then he, through many different angles, and he researched, and as a result of his research, that he realized, or he found, there's a certain thing that he can practice that give him what he wants, what he needs. Literally means the thing that solve the whole problem. Until that solution happened, no matter which part of the world you were born, no matter what kind of luxuries that you are experiencing, there's no permanent happiness that you can achieve. So once he realized that, and then he sacrificed so many things, his whole luxury lifestyle, his family and power, position, everything, and then he meditated for many years. And after that, then he achieved what we call enlightenment. Basically, this means free from every type of suffering. So after he achieved enlightenment, then he taught 84,000 teachings for all of us to practice, so that we can become enlightened, so that we can become just like him, so that we can become all free from suffering and achieve happiness. So before Buddha passed into parinirvana, he left 4 important messages. So what he said was to his disciples around him: after I pass away, and you tell this message to the world. So what is the message? Prince Siddhartha came, and then he practiced the Dharma, and he achieved enlightenment. Then he taught 84,000 teachings. Then he passed into parinirvana. So why these 4 messages are so important is because a lot of times people will think that enlightenment is something way beyond than what we can achieve. Because people always think that human being and God realm are totally two different things. So human being or sentient beings are always victims, and then God is a protector. So people don't believe that you can become a God. You can become enlightenment. So that's why Buddha says Prince Siddhartha came. Who was Prince Siddhartha? He was just an ordinary person, just like us, who did not come with a tremendous light, tremendous clairvoyance, nothing special, just an ordinary person. But because of out of his effort, his morality, his discipline, his wisdom, and he achieved enlightenment. So that shows that all the sentient being, every sentient being can achieve enlightenment just like him. So that gives us a lot of hope. Princess Siddhartha came as an ordinary person. After he practiced, he achieved enlightenment. Why not us? So then the next question is how to become enlightenment. So then Buddha taught 84,000 teachings. He taught these teachings how to achieve enlightenment. So all these teachings are still available for us. So once we practice this teaching, we can become like him. We can achieve enlightenment. So then the last words, he passed into parinirvana. That's also very important teaching, because the impermanent is one of the important key elements of Buddha's teaching, which is most important thing for every living beings to realize and to understand, that nothing is everlasting. Because if you don't understand that everything is subject to change, everything is, impermanent, then it is difficult for us to have enthusiasm or prepare for next life and after lifetimes. So that he says nothing is everlasting, everything is subject to change. So therefore Buddha Shakyamuni, who is a revealer of this profound and extensive teaching, who is the founder of this Buddhism, also has to pass into parinirvana. So if we don't do anything, then one day our life will be end. So if you don't practice the Dharma and you have no preparation for next steps of spiritual journey to achieve enlightenment. So that's why these 4 things are extremely important. So in these 4 things, it shows that ordinary person can have the potential to achieve enlightenment. So then for that point, what Buddha said was every sentient being have the potential, and in Buddhism we call it Buddha nature. But actually it's not really Buddha nature. It's nature of phenomena, nature of all sentient beings. So this nature, the clarity nature or profound luminosity nature, that is exist within every living being. So once we develop that, then we will realize who we are. We will develop our basic potential or basic nature to limitless. That's the time we become Buddha. We become enlightened. So that's really important to know for all of us, whether we have this potential or not. Because if you don't believe, or if you don't know that you have a potential, then it is difficult to put emphasis, enthusiasm onto practice because you don't have confidence and you don't really have a hope. If you don't know this, that you have a potential, means that you're trying to do something that you're not sure whether you will achieve, whether you have the possibility of achieve the result or not. Because in a milk, there's butter. So if you know that within the milk there is a butter, so if you do all this process work and shaking and stuff, then the butter will come out. But the first you have to know that within milk there's for sure there is butter. Even though you don't see it right now, but if you put all this process, procedures, butter will come. And then you can use the butter. So if you don't know that you have a potential or Buddha nature, then it's like you're trying to get butter out of water. You know, you never know whether there is butter or not, but you're trying. So if you're shaking water, doesn't matter if you shakes for years and years, water will not come. The butter will not come out from the water. So this is a really important key element that we need to know, that we have that potential. So that potential is also explained as emptiness, because when we talk about emptiness, non-existent, interdependent. So we have all these appearances outside. There's a form, sound, smell, taste, and feeling. So these are, none of them exist by its own. They're all interdependent. They are relatively existed. So their nature is emptiness. Their nature is actually potential of everything. Because for instance, we have things like good and bad, and pleasant, unpleasant, happy, unhappy, you know, big and small, and so on. But none of them exist by its own. All are relativity. Good is compared to, you know, worse than that, it becomes good. But when you compare that into better than that, then it becomes not good anymore. So which means everything is interdependent. Everything is a relative, you know. So their essence is the potential or emptiness. This is one of the important things that we have to realize. One of the way that Buddha explained the emptiness is because if you look, let's say something, you have let's say flower here, and some people can think that this flower is really beautiful, very nice, and some people think it's bad, not nice, and some people think it's okay, neutral. If the flower itself, either good or bad, exists, why would everybody perceive in the same way? Why would everybody think either it's good or bad or neutral? Because that flower had the potential to be good, potential to be bad, potential to be neutral. So similarly, our essence of sentient beings, which is the potential, we have a potential to achieve enlightenment, and we also have a potential to be the inferior or worst being on the earth. And also we have the potential to be neutral. So that is what emptiness really means. The basic potential or basic goodness or whatever you call of sentient being. So now what we have to do is that once we realize that we have such a potential, then we have to, climb up, build up our potentials until to reach to the highest, the maximum part of our nature, our mind. So to do this is actually not so easy. Why? Because when we talk about our basic potential, it's talking about the mind. Mind is like a two sides of a coin. There is, even though the real nature of the mind is ultimately clear, perfection, but its other side of the mind is also afflictive emotions. So if we don't practice, if we don't put effort to build this potential up, it doesn't naturally happen. But then in other side, we have all these negative emotions: anger, pride, jealousy, attachment. They're always around us. So they brings our nature actually down and down and down. So therefore, we have to, based on knowing, we have to reduce all these negative emotions. The more you reduce these negative emotions, your positive side of your mind increases. Your wisdom increases, your compassion, loving kindness, forgiveness, understanding, and every good aspect of our mind increases. At the same time, our anger, pride, jealousy, attachment, and all these things are reduces. So once our negative emotions totally eradicate, once our positive aspect of mind totally developed, that's the time that we call Buddha, achieve enlightenment. So to do that, we have to do the practice the Dharma. So this practice, the Dharma, is not only for the Buddhist practitioners, but this is useful for whoever want to have a happiness and whoever want to reduce suffering. So Buddha realized that, and every sentient being have that potential, and everything is a subject to change. All the negativities and obscurations of sentient beings are subject to remove. All the compassion, loving kindness, and good aspects of the mind of all sentient beings are subject to developed. So out of his limitless compassion and wisdom, he taught 84,000 teachings so that we can practice these teachings. So now that teaching established over 2,500 years. So it went into different part of the world and then eventually came to Tibet. So the Buddha's teaching that came to Tibet came from the University of Nalanda, the famous Buddhist university in India, where there are the most Indian masters such as Nagarjuna and Asanga and so on. So these teachings involve 3 levels of the yana. It involves Theravada, Mahayana practice, and Vajrayana practice. So these 3 aspects. So if you want to be a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, we have to gradually practice on all those levels. So we have Theravada path or yana, which include the Four Noble Truths, practice of Four Noble Truths. And then we have Mahayana vehicle, which include practices of 6 perfections. So then we have a Vajrayana vehicle, which include recitation, mantra, and visualization, and so on. So all these we have to practice gradually. You cannot just jump up to the highest point and then practice. This is impossible. Because in the sutras it says that first you have to learn the lower vehicles, then the Mahayana vehicles, and then Vajrayana. Even within the Vajrayana, there are different levels. You have to go step by step. So you cannot just jump up to the highest point and then spontaneously achieve enlightenment. So that is impossible. So therefore, the first teaching of the Buddha, he taught Four Noble Truths. So the reason why he taught Four Noble Truths is because all the sentient beings, every sentient beings, we have suffering. Suffering of suffering and suffering of change, suffering of all pervasive. So what he said was that you have to understand and you have to know what are the sufferings. So once we realized or once we know this suffering, then we have to find out where all this suffering comes from. So that is actually a second noble truth. Cause of suffering. So once you realize that where all this suffering comes from, then we have to first reduce or remove the cause of suffering. So what are the cause of suffering? The main source of the cause of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance is actually a source of all the afflictive emotions. So here the ignorance doesn't mean you don't know how to be a good person. It doesn't mean you don't know how to deal with other people. It means that you don't know what is the cause and conditions for our happiness which we need to build. What are the cause and conditions of suffering that we need to remove? So from these ignorance, we have anger, pride, jealousy, and attachment. All those things that arises. So once you remove these, then your suffering will spontaneously disappear. But if we don't remove these cause and conditions of suffering, then even though you manage to remove your suffering, because you still have the cause and conditions exist, it will come back again and again. So that's why you have to remove cause and the conditions of the suffering. So these are the two cause and effect of the Four Noble Truths, which is the samsaric part. So then we have a third noble truth, which is the truth of cessation. The truth of cessation is once you free from suffering, once you remove all these afflictive emotions, remove your suffering, then what will happen? What you can achieve? You can achieve arhat, you can achieve bodhisattva, you can achieve Buddha. So to achieve this enlightenment, to achieve that result, what do we have to do? We have to practice on a path. Path is the fourth noble truth. What is the path? It's Dharma. Dharma practice that Buddha taught after he achieved enlightenment. So since my main topic here is a compassion and loving kindness, so I wanted to try to elaborate the compassion and loving kindness a little more here. So the key element or key framework of the Buddha's practice is a compassion and loving kindness. Why? Because the whole purpose of the Buddha's teaching is to free from suffering and achieve enlightenment. So, in the cycle of samsara, there are no beings that doesn't want to have a happiness and want to have a suffering. It is universally equal to all sentient beings. Nobody wants to have a suffering and nobody wants to have a suffering. But doesn't necessarily everybody know what is the cause and conditions of the suffering that we need to abandon, and what is the cause and conditions of the happiness that we have to cultivate. So that's why samsara is full of suffering. So now, to free beings from samsara and achieve enlightenment, Buddha taught all those different levels of the teachings, from the very lowest point to the top, the highest tantra, highest practice of the Buddhism. So the compassion and the loving kindness is not only useful for Buddhist practitioners. The compassion and the practice loving kindness is mandatory for every beings who want to have happiness and who doesn't want to have a suffering. So this is not only perspective of a religious or spiritual path, but also in our daily life, the compassion and loving kindness is the most important thing. So if you know how to cultivate compassion and a loving kindness, you will be able to manage your whole life happily. You will know how to deal with your family, friends, community, and everybody who you have to face. Because lack of that understanding and the world have so much problems. So that's why we needed two aspects, wisdom and compassion. Wisdom to know what we need to do, what are the important things that we should cultivate for our happiness, and then compassion towards all sentient beings. The limitless compassion and limitless loving kindness. So these two are extremely important and in Buddhist practice. So once you have these two, then your spiritual path, spiritual journey becomes peaceful and easy, as well as your daily life makes much easier. Because in these compassion and loving kindness and wisdom involve so many things, from right now till achieve enlightenment. And these are useful aspect, a useful method for every level of our achievement, for our mundane life, as well as our spiritual path.
大家好，我是堪布泽朗扎西。我们现在周围有一个11位4大教派的一些上师，一起团结一致的，就是开始有做那个网络电视台，请你们多多就是护持我们，谢谢。